Now to share an update on part of that nuclear opportunity, it's my pleasure to introduce our nuclear panel. Here to provide an important update on the opportunities unfolding across Canada's nuclear sector, SMRs, new builds, and refurbishment projects, the supply chain growth and skills development sponsored by EPSCA, the Electrical Power Systems Contractor Association. Joining us are Nicolle Butcher, CEO from Ontario Power Generation, Laurie Swami, President and CEO of Nuclear Waste Management Organization, Tim Gitzel, CEO of Cameco, and George Christidis, President and CEO of the Canadian Nuclear Association. Moderating, yes, please, yes. Moderating the conversation is Seamus O'Regan, who during his time in government was instrumental in driving the nuclear opportunity forward. Please join me in welcoming Seamus and our panelists to the stage.
Oh, it's great to see you all smiling. Because I read a headline today. It was in a publication, a trade publication, but a lot of big investors read it around North America, called Motley Fool. And it said, nuclear power comeback is real. Not that you guys ever doubted that for a moment, but for a lot of people, like it is very good to know, for investors to know, but especially for the people in this room to know, the people who are going to be building, these projects. So, George, why don't I start with you? Why don't you give us, a layout where the industry is right now? How good is it?
Well, thanks, and it's great to see you again, quite frankly. It's great to be here, and we work so closely with our union partners, right? So it's fabulous. What can I say? The transformation in the industry the last few years has been incredible. Everything from the refurbishments, the successful refurbishments in Ontario, led by OPG and Bruce Power, on time, on budget, to new nuclear projects, of course, in Ontario as well as in Saskatchewan. Alberta's talking about nuclear. Brunswick. You're really looking at a sort of pan-Canadian view of the interest and the growth of the industry. You're also looking at the international lens as well, where, quite frankly, the inclusion of nuclear in terms of, originally climate objectives and then energy security objectives has really increased the interest across the board, right? So right across the supply chain, right? From uranium mining to large reactors, small reactors, nuclear is definitely baked into a lot of the economic energy frameworks, and that is really a key driver in the economy right now. So as we're looking at the future, it's quite bright from that perspective.
So let's talk about projects. Let's talk about what your plans are for the next 3 to 5 years, let's say, in terms of refurbishments, in terms of new projects, phases, and thinking of the people in this room, thinking of the building trades and what you're looking for, what will keep them occupied. Tim, we'll begin with Cameco. I look at you, I think when I was Indigenous Services Minister and Natural Resources Minister, going out to visit you, visiting Cigar Lake, it blows the mind. But now we're at a different level. Globally, nuclear now is once again seen as the answer. Tell me what Cameco's plans are right now.
Yeah, thanks, Seamus, and thanks to all of you for having us here today to talk about nuclear. So from Saskatchewan, I live in Saskatoon. Our company Cameco is headquartered there. We're in the nuclear business, mostly in the nuclear fuel business. So we supply nuclear fuel. We're blessed in Saskatchewan with these enormous uranium mines. Uranium is the fuel for nuclear reactors that Nicolle and others run. So it starts there. We have fuel fabrication facilities here in Ontario. We have a refinery in Blind River, and then we have a conversion facility in Port Hope, Cobourg. We make fuel for the CANDU reactor fleet. And then a couple of years ago we said, well, that's not good enough. We want to do more. We see nuclear really moving. It's taken off. We want to be part of the global picture. So we went out and we bought a company called Westinghouse and their nuclear reactor program. And so right now we wanted to create our own demand, if you like. So we want to build reactors, and we are building them around the world. And then we'll fuel them with Canadian nuclear fuel. So that's what we're up to. What gets us up in the morning, just look at any chart from any organization around the world on electricity demand going forward. It's up and to the right, way up and way right. And so, we're talking about doubling the amount of electricity required, decarbonization, electrification, EVs, we'll see how that goes. But just these data centers are just gobbling up, and Nicole's a way better expert than I am, just gigawatts of nuclear. And these companies, these big ones, Google, Alphabet, Microsoft, AWS, they all want clean 24/7 baseload electricity. That's nuclear power. And so we said we want to play that game. And so we have the steelworkers, by the way, with us in Saskatchewan at all our facilities. We're building, we're expanding the size of our mines. We're building projects around the world with utilities. We work with utilities. And so, it looks pretty bright, Seamus, and you did a great job as minister. We miss you a lot. But Canada can be a world leader by a long shot. I call it energy superpower. Maybe that's just me, but in nuclear, I can tell you, and that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, back in 2019, when I just become Minister of Natural Resources, it just seemed so obvious to me what a competitive advantage Canada had as a top player in nuclear technology, in uranium. We had everything. And so, I didn't see anything wrong at all coming out unabashedly and saying the government of Canada is 100% behind nuclear. But apparently it caught a few people by surprise. And anyway, it didn't matter because there's no looking back. And especially with this Prime Minister, there's no looking back.
More electricity. And so you look at your choices. People look at coal, don't love it, but we're going to use it for a while yet. Yeah. Oil, not really for electricity generation. Gas, better. Doesn't have the greenhouse emissions, but still has some. Hydro, I don't know, Nicolle could tell us about trying to dam up a new river, Site C or Muskrat Falls. Not easy, not easy. And then wind and solar, yeah, sure, all the time. They run about 30% of the time. So what are you going to do when you're going to double your electricity? And so that's what we could see. We could see the tailwinds coming, and that's why we got on board.
So I'll go to you, Laurie, next, because there's a lot of work to be done in geological repositories, where we put the waste, right? And that is really important to Canadians. That's one of the things that, that we see all the benefits of nuclear, the fact that the emissions are, its dependability, its reliability, but waste is a concern. Tell me what you're doing about it, and tell me about, the scale of work.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to be here and talk about waste because that's what I think about all the time. And I'm glad you placed me beside Cameco here because I'm going to take that waste and I'm going to safely store it. And that's for all of Canada's waste. And we've been working on this project. The NMWO has been in existence since 2002. And we're very excited that we selected a site for a used fuel repository or a deep geologic repository at the end of 24 so that we could begin the actual construction of a facility. We have a few more steps to take before we actually construct in terms of getting regulatory approval, but then we'll be able to offer Canada a world-class facility that suits the world-class industry that we have here, and we're pretty proud of that. As a country, Canada is one of the leading countries in terms of waste disposal, so I think all of us could be very proud of that as well. And so that project will get started very shortly for used fuel. And we'll also have a project coming after that, a second DGR for all of the for the intermediate level waste in Canada as well. So we're going to solve the waste problem, and we won't have to talk about it anymore when there's an expansion of nuclear for SMR, for Westinghouse, for whatever the technology will be. We'll be there, and we'll be taking that waste and making sure it's safely stored forever.
Well, paint the picture for us. Like tell us what's involved with the geological repository and all those syllables. Give us, what kind of jobs are we looking at? How many jobs are we looking at?
So if I look to the number of jobs, so as we develop the site during our construction phase, which will probably start in about 5 years, we'll be building a mine. So we'll be going about 600 meters below grade. We'll be developing the mine, shaft sinking. We talked a little bit about that in the hallway. So we'll be building that mine. So we'll need all of the trades to be there that you can think of, electricians, mechanics. We today have borehole drilling going on our site. So of course that's also skilled trades that are very important to us. So over a 10-year period, we'll have about 1,000 people working at the site to construct it. which we think is a really great opportunity to build a workforce in northwestern Ontario where we'll be sited. And after we get to construction, we begin operations, we'll have about 600 to 700 people working at the site, 24/7 operation. And during that period, we also will continue with the mine development. So there's a lot of skilled trades that we're relying on, and hopefully people will want to come and work for us. We think it's a pretty stable environment for 10 years of construction and beyond. So we're really looking forward to that.
You took a lot of time and trouble to figure out this site, right? I mean, and just briefly, maybe tell us some of the factors involved in picking the site.
Okay, so in 1992, there was a site selection process for a deep geologic repository for used fuel in Canada. And that went to an environmental assessment panel, and it was said that we had technical ability to build a DGR. It would be safely managed, but we didn't have the social license to proceed. And so that project was stopped, and our organization was created with the intent of developing a process that required consent from municipality to participate on the project. But as time went on, so 2002 till 2007, we started thinking about what that process would be. With the intent, we launched it in 2010. We started working with communities. We actually had 22 municipalities come forward to raise their hand to say, we're interested in this project. And of course, if you think about that, it's a nuclear waste disposal facility. Most communities would not have said, hey, bring that to my backyard. So we worked on that, but at the same time, I would say there's been a significant shift in Indigenous relationships in Canada, and so we had to really think through how do we bring Indigenous people to the table given the municipalities were leading. And so over the period between 2010 and 2024, we had to work very hard with Indigenous communities that heard for the first time the municipality said yes, and you want us to do this? And that was another very challenging conversation. And I can say over a period of time, when we finally selected our site near Ignace, Ontario, and in the traditional territory, or the territory of Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation, the First Nation was the strongest supporter for us moving forward. A lot of work. And we're very proud to have a really good working relationship with Wabigoon and with Ignace, of course.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Nicolle, you've been busy. A lot of work. A lot of work. Tell us about OPG.
Yeah, I think of this transition as not just starting. I feel like we've been on it for about 10 years. So about 10 years ago, we started our Darlington refurbishment project. And we're very proud to announce in March, we brought the last unit back and brought it back ahead of schedule and $150 million under budget. So really set us up well for our next project, which we've already started. So we are building the G7's first SMR, so small modular reactor. It is under construction right beside the Darlington facility. We will build 4 of them. And what we learned on the Darlington refurbishment is the first unit is always really hard. That's where you really learn how to do things. You get your playbook down and you figure it out, and then the next 3 become easier and easier. And so on the SMR, we wanted to build 4 of them. We know the first one's going to be hard, but then we will be able to take those lessons and really get good through the second, third, and fourth reactor. And the way we look at this is all sort of building to building large reactors. Yeah. So whether we're building CANDU or Westinghouse reactor, we have a site called Wesleyville in Port Hope that can host 8 to 10 gigawatts. So we'll be one of the largest sites in the world, and we will look to start that building by the end of start construction early 2030s, in service early 2040s. So we see it as a continual building of our capacity. As we learned from our refurbishment, then we're also refurbishing our Pickering facility, so it is underway. We'll start this September. Significant undertaking there. in building our SMRs to build the capacity not only within OPG, but to build the trades capacity to prepare for those large nuclear reactors, to build the supply chain capacity, the engineering. Like you can't just turn around tomorrow and decide you're going to build a large reactor. You have to have built the infrastructure and the skills to really be able to do that. So that's...
You start working with building trades fairly early to...
Yes, and it's important to us because like the skilled trades that we had welding the 4th unit of our Darlington refurbishment unit, the very next day went to weld on our SMR site, and you know what? They are phenomenal. They know how to build to nuclear quality. They can hit the ground running, and really, as we think about, you know, maybe I'll use weld failure rates as an example. You know, the first unit had very high weld failure rates, and then over the 4 units of refurb, we got down to a really good point. And we're starting the SMR at that really good point and seeing how much better can we get. And so that it's important that the skills that the trades have built working in our existing nuclear is really transferable to the SMR and to our Pickering facility.
That's the first thing that struck me when I dealt with nuclear and when I was natural resources, is we have such a competitive advantage in our trades. Yes, that we are the best at this. Yep. And the world recognizes us as being the best at this. So why would you throw away any sort of competitive advantage like that? Yeah. George, why don't you tell us, you know, talking about small modular reactors and versus the refurbishment of existing reactors. Tell us the story of both, the benefits of both, and maybe most particularly, I'm thinking, just explain to us the benefits of small modular reactors.
Well, I think that's one of the benefits of nuclear technologies in general is just the, you know, as Nicolle pointed out, the need for skilled labor, the need for, it contributes to innovation, it strengthens the industrial base. There's a whole range of benefits, right? From a perspective of large, you know, nuclear reactors versus small modular reactors, it comes down to some extent, what is the need? What's the grid need, you know? And, you know, so for example, Ontario's need is slightly different from Saskatchewan's, or slightly different maybe potentially in Alberta or New Brunswick and the like. I think all technologies play a role. I think each jurisdiction, each province will take a look at what is the combination. Some are going to combine large and small with other technologies, whether it's hydro, whether it's other resources, right? Renewables, for example. So from our perspective, it's always been that nuclear is part of the solution to generate clean, non-emitting electricity. It creates jobs, it sustains innovation, it really supports industrial policy, if I could use that term. And right now, given the state of where Canada is, where the world is, these contributions, these benefits are really significant. They always were, but right now, when you're looking at the need to create jobs or economic resilience, nuclear plays a very fundamental role, including large and small.
So what are the advantages of the scale? Like if you're building a small modular reactor, is it just scale, or are there other advantages involved with that size? Look,
you know, jurisdiction like Ontario and Saskatchewan took a look at SMRs technology. I mean, Nicolle can talk about it a lot more clearly on that. But, you know, Hitachi, 300 megawatts. You could add units as needed. There's 4 units going to be built in Ontario. Saskatchewan's looking at another 4. So the concept is in the SMR space that, yes, you could add these units. Others will argue that you can look at large reactors that can accomplish a lot of this sort of electricity demand as well. So each jurisdiction is going to take a look at the balance, the assembly of these technologies. Some will go more large, some will go a combination, in combination with other energy sources as well. But the point is, they are strategic assets to be looked at and assembled to maximize the benefit, not only electricity generation.
Fast on the technology gives Canada a big competitive advantage.
Absolutely, and Canada is a leader. I mean, just to reiterate what you said, you know this from your experience, there are some fundamentals, and we do talk with our building and trades colleagues about this all the time. We work very closely with them, but there are some fundamentals about enabling, where we're at right now. We're moving away from sort of the theoretical to now more the practical. There are some decisions that have to be made. The regulatory environment needs to be ready. The nuclear financial models have to be ready. workforce has to be ready. There's some real fundamental decision points for government and governments to be ready to trigger right now, because we're moving away from sort of just the policy discussion to really projects and what they need to proceed in an environment, quite frankly, where economic development is a national security consideration.
Indeed. I'll get into that in a second. Tim, I wanted to ask you about Indigenous workforce, Indigenous hiring. I remember going to Cigar Lake, and you were so proud to point out, see these guys, it's an Indigenous company that's looking after the flight that we took there, the food services, the mining itself. How do you, it's tricky. How do you balance, specific building trades with Indigenous and diversity in the workforce? How do you manage that?
I know you folks find this really hard to believe, but not everybody wants to live in Saskatchewan, so you have to kind of deal with. I know you'd find it hard to believe, but so labor is always an issue for us. When we started right from day one, this is 40 years ago, and we said we have a built-in workforce that live. Our mines are about 500 miles, 700 kilometers north of Saskatoon, so they're up remote areas. Indigenous communities up there that have lived there for hundreds of years. We said we have a workforce right here. We just have to get them ready. Today we're Canada's largest employer of Indigenous people. We train them, we educate them, we put them through trades training. We just ran a trades training program at one of our sites. We had 10, intake of 10, all Indigenous, all women. Like, there's a workforce out there that if you spend some time and train them up, like, they are fantastic. And so we've been working on that. Over 50% of our employees at the mine sites, we have 4 sites, are Indigenous. They're the best employees, part of, as I say, the steel workers union. They all get along well. We're proud to have them. And you know what? We hear a lot about, they can't get along with the Indigenous groups, or there's blocking. We don't have any problems, because every community up there, if they don't work for us, they're contracting to us, or their brother or sister or mother or somebody's working for us. So we all kind of live in harmony. And it's been, people say, well, it's an expense. No, not even close. It's a competitive advantage for us that we wouldn't trade. Yes, we still need a lot of skilled trades that you can't get or you can't trade term up there, 100%. But we use as much as we can there, and for us, it's been a real benefit.
And Laurie, I imagine, takes an awful long time to be an overnight success. And you've done the hard work of dealing with First Nations in the area. Tell me about, are you at that stage where you're able to talk about workforce agreements with them?
We have an agreement with Wabigoon, and part of that agreement is to develop a training and employment program. That's true for both the municipality and Wabigoon, but we're really focused on Wabigoon. And the first thing we've done is to set some targets for ourselves of how that could be done. We're working with the communities now to understand what their skill set is, so that we can understand where do we direct or start to talk about the training program, because while we're still in the regulatory process, we know that as soon as we get out of that, we want to start construction, and it takes time for skilled labor to build their skills, build their qualifications, and go through the process. And so we need to start that sooner than later. And so we're working with Wabigoon on what that could look like. We're looking at some of the local colleges. There's a few areas in Dryden, very close to where we work, where there's training programs available, and we're really trying to get the interest in joining us, get that skills, so that when we're ready, they're ready to go. And it's hard because there isn't a large infrastructure build in that area, and so they have to get the skills, and it's almost a catch-22. We need the skills. How do we get the skills? They've got to go away from the community to actually build them. And that's a hard thing for the community to think about. So really important to us to build that skill, and we're going to need help to get there, I would say.
Laurie, tell me more about this, about, on time. I think there's real, obviously, lessons to be learned here, very positive ones. On time, under budget, and you attribute some of that success to the relationships that you've had with the building trades from the bottom up. Can you tell me how that works for you?
Yeah, I think if you think about it, the trades are at the work phase doing the work, and that's where things go well or they don't go well. And so really making sure from a planning perspective that we've gotten feedback. So one of the things we were really good at in Darlington refurbishment that we're trying to make sure we take to everything else we do are actually compiling lessons learned and getting lessons learned from the right people. So it's not the guy that's sitting at a desk who's gonna be able to look and say, hey, I have a creative, great idea of how we can do this better. It's the people at the workface that say, it just took me an hour to get through security to be able to get into the plant. It took me, 2 hours of waiting for work management to issue a work permit so I can actually go and do my work. Those are the kinds of things that you have to go after. And for our Pickering refurbishment, work protection, for instance, we've taken a completely different perspective on. We have completely changed the way that we will issue the work permits to be able to get people to the workplace faster. And we can only really get those kind of insights through the trades, and understanding what's eating their lunch every day and how can we actually make it much more efficient. So that was a big piece of our refurbishment success, and we actually, from the first unit to the fourth unit, shaved 360 days off of the schedule. So we were that much faster on the fourth unit because we had over 8,000 lessons learned that we meticulously went and said, what do we do with this piece of advice that just came in? How do we fix it? Over and over and over again. And now we're starting with all of those lessons learned into the SMR and into Pickering refurbishment. So it really is an important type of feedback that we get from the trades to understand how do we increase productivity. Because that's how we shave 360 days off the schedule. And really, it's not even necessarily about getting it done faster. It's about proving we can do it on time and on budget so that we continue to have the public confidence to be able to go and build the next one. And that's what we're building to when we ultimately get to the large reactor.
Because stability can be a competitive advantage, and if you get that stability by listening to the people on the front lines from the get-go.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. Go ahead. Yeah.
A point here that, so the CNA, we did a workforce study very recently, and folks here could go online and we have all the details there. But fundamentally, the message is that jobs will be created as long as, the projects proceed, and that's where that urgency does kick in, like governments enabling the right condition, federal, provincial governments to proceed to start to push forward these opportunities. And now's the time, right? So just, the message I'd leave here is like we're in cooperation with Building and Trades and the other union partners. CNA has been working very closely. We've had a number of meetings together with federal, provincial governments across the board. And that is a fundamental message because, in the state of the economy, this sector can provide a very reliable future from a labor perspective. And I think, though, we're at the point of having to proceed. So we're eagerly looking, for example, at the economic update by the Prime Minister and future, budget signals and whatever decisions provincial governments make as well. Those are foundational now of needing to proceed. And time is to make those decisions and proceed.
I think that's a critical point. And I think, for the trades unions in the room, we have to do this as a partnership. Like, we understand the demand we're going to have, and we have pretty good estimates all the way through to 2050 of what we need. And you have the perspective on supply, and we need to be able to bring those together. Because I think we're talking about how do we get to grade school kids and start to influence their thinking on this? How are we making sure high schools have the right program? How are we increasing capacity at colleges and universities to be able to do this? And so we are on critical path right now for that large nuclear project. And I do think we have to be able to do it together. We have to be able to advocate for what we need together. And I do think that's a key piece that over the next 12, 24 months, we really need to get together on.
Because for all the talk we have of stability, this is not a stable world that we are in right now. And maybe, Tim, I'll ask you just how, everybody is talking about energy and energy security. And with the Strait of Hormuz backed up and 20% of the world's oil backed up and the reverberations of that around the world that we haven't even felt yet, how has that left nuclear? How's that left your company? How's that left uranium?
Well, I'm a bit embarrassed to say it, but it's helped us. It's helped us in the fact that, George, somebody said, I mean, we went from climate security to energy security, now national security. If your electricity grid doesn't run, you're doomed. And if you can't get your oil through a pipeline or your natural gas or around the strait and into, you don't have electricity, you can't run your country. And so that's what we're facing now. So if you look, and of course I'm pro-nuke, as you can imagine, but a nuclear power plant, people might tell us, I'm really not affected. Maybe some of the supplies, but your electricity is still going out the door every day, and she has fuel on site probably for 2 years, I would think. It's really been a bit of a benefit for us, people looking, okay, are we going to rely on the Russians, and I'm talking internationally, for natural gas going forward? Are we going to depend on Nord Stream or whatever the pipelines are? And so I think it's given nuclear a bit of a push.
And even when you look more broadly at the geopolitical, like, we spend 90% of our operations, maintenance, and capital is in Canada. And we spend a lot of money. Our capital expenditures are now up to $8-9 billion a year. And so that's a lot of money in Canada, which is different than some of the other technologies like solar and wind, where the bulk of the spend is actually to procure materials that have been manufactured elsewhere and brought in. And so it really is, it's that economic development impact that nuclear has, not only to the electricity when you've finished it, but in and of itself, building nuclear has an economic impact because you do so much of it in Canada.
That's right. Look, for the final round of questions, the way I addressed this room yesterday was that this is the most powerful room right now in Canada. In a time that, you know, the Prime Minister and the whole country wants to build and build now, to look after ourselves, to look after our own energy security. These are the people who make it happen. And I can tell you, as a former minister, some of the best lobbyists I've ever seen on Parliament Hill. Persistent, for sure. But let me just ask each of you, maybe I'll begin with Laurie. When this crowd takes to the Hill, or when this crowd sees national leaders here in Ottawa, provincial leaders at home, Indigenous leadership anywhere in the country, municipal leaders, what do you want to pitch to them? What's your argument? What do you want them to say?
So I'll start a little differently. I think this room has tremendous credibility with the public, with stakeholders, with various people, including rights holders. And our experience is that we actually need to build that support more broadly for nuclear. I live in the nuclear waste world, but it's certainly something, you know, nuclear doesn't go far before someone says, what about the waste? And so it's really quite important for people that actually have that credibility to share it. And I wanted to share a short story, if I could. When we were working in the Northwest, there was a lot of issues around transportation of used fuel. This is the thing that is now the new problem for us, is how do you transport it? And of course, it's truck transport. And so we actually relied on OPG. They sent one of their truck drivers, a skilled person, came to a lot of our open houses and explained their training, the way they care about the materials that they're transporting, the way they take safety into consideration. And no matter how many times I could have said exactly the same thing, it was the driver, that skilled laborer, who was actually able to convince people, oh yeah, I think it will be safe. And then that issue just went away. And so if you took that story and you spread it, you know, across the key stakeholders, key decision makers, with that credibility, you have such a great story to tell, and that should convince others this is the right answer.
Here. What do you think?
I think it's about credibility too. And so when I look at our projects, it's about being able to do them on time and on budget, given government confidence that when we say this is what it's going to cost and when we're going to get it done, we're going to do that, and we're going to do it safely with quality. And so when I think about the trades, all 4 of those things are fundamentally driven by the skilled trades. So it is really important as you're thinking about talking, wherever you're trying to influence, recognizing how important you are to our projects and getting them done on time, on budget, safely, with quality.
And the secret sauce is having that relationship and building it up from the ground up.
Yep.
That's your competitive advantage. I love it. George, go ahead.
I don't know much more to add, quite frankly. I extend our, behalf of our association, our hand with building and trades and our other labor partners. It's just foundational, right? I would say, if I could, I'll be a little punchy here, in a sense that I think the world is starting to catch up, and I think the labor movement and building and trades has always said this, but it's time we're all recognizing the importance of real jobs, right? We've entered a point that it's about real jobs sustaining communities. And in some way, the Western world had forgotten that somehow a little bit along the way. So I see it as a little bit of an awakening or reawakening that you need to build stuff, you need to make stuff, you need to make stuff, you need to create jobs. People work, they go to the schools, they buy coffee, they get their haircuts. I don't have that problem anymore. You got all this other stuff, and that's real. And somewhere along the way, in the Western world, we kind of lost touch of that. And so the consequences of what we're seeing right now, where we're realizing we need uranium, we need this, we need that, we need to make stuff, there's a sort of this awakening. And in a lot of ways, the labor movement, building and trades, has been talking about this for a long time, and we've been talking about it, but now's the time to really make it clear. The time to act is now, and we need labor's help, building and trades help to do that, to deliver that message as well.
Tim, last to you.
Yeah, Seamus, I would just say, what can we do if we have a chance to? Let's go together. Like, let's go up on the hill together. Let's go with the trade unions. Let's go with. I'd go with you. Let's take some Aboriginal people with us. Maybe our women in mining group. Can you imagine anybody saying no to what we're asking? Not a chance. Sean's over here somewhere. So Sean reached out to me. We met each other. There he is over there. We met each other a year and a half ago, and he said, hey, let's go for coffee and talk about life and what you do and what I do. And we found we had so much in common. He said, you got to come to our convention. Like, it's unbelievable, and we'll talk about this. So I said, if you invite me, I'll come. And here we are today talking to each other and just having a chance to talk together. Like I said, those different groups, we go up on the hill. There's nobody's not going to open the door for us when we come in, and we can work together. So that would be my advice.
That's it. Nuclear is a great energy story. Nuclear is a great Canadian story. George, Tim, Laurie, Nicolle, thank you very much for this. This is terrific. Appreciate your time. Thank you.